Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. Today I'll be showing you something very interesting. This is actually a rare piece of gear. You don't see many of these things around for obvious reasons. But what we have here is, some of you may have already heard the term Moog White Elephant. And it's white and it's huge. That's where it gets its name from. But what it actually is, it's a Cordovox CDX organ. And it's basically just an organ with a Moog Satellite built into it. Very similar to what you find with like the Thomas organs. You know, Thomas Organ Company is actually who manufactured the Moog Satellite for Moog. It was kind of the generic Moog, because it was designed by Moog, but it wasn't manufactured by Moog. And it was in a lot of different products, from Thomas Organs to, you know, Cordovox, etc. here. And really it all comes back down to Norland. So Norland is the big corporation that owned Moog during this time. And they owned everything from Gillette razors to Domino Sugar, Frito-Lay. And then they owned Gibson, Gibson guitars. They owned Pearl drums. They owned Cordovox. They owned Lowry organs. They owned Moog. And so a lot of this stuff would kind of cross over, in design. And they would just kind of use things. And the Satellite, for example, was used in a lot of different things for that reason, because it's kind of just the generic Moog as mentioned. But anyways, I got this one all fixed. I will show you what's inside this thing here in a few minutes, but I'll kind of tell you what was going on with this one. So the organ side of it actually worked pretty well. The issue I had was all with the Moog Satellite, and we had a weird issue. First of all, it was really unstable. I mean, it would just not hold tuning, it wouldn't calibrate. We had so many things going on with it, it's just messed up. But the big thing was, you would hit the footage 2 switch, bring it down, and you'd lose all audio. The audio would completely drop out. And so I hooked a scope up to the oscillator. I could push this down. I could see our frequency was still running. Everything was still working on the oscillator, and this was actually doing an octave shift, which was what it was supposed to do. But we'd lose complete audio. That threw me off for a good while, because it took me a while to figure out why that would even affect audio. So finally I dissected this thing. I pulled the harness out, I pulled the switches out, and I came to the conclusion that the switches right here are also your power distribution, which is very odd, a very goofy kind of design. But they actually pull the 9 volts from the switch here, because it uses 9 volt switching to switch on and off the circuit is what you're doing. And it also works as the power distribution for this board over here. Well, when that switch would be pushed down, it would actually break away from the 9 volts, and it would also lose the 9 volts because the bus bar across these 2 switches for power distribution wasn't soldered anymore. It's cracked solder. It wouldn't take solder. I had to make a new bus in there, and that was the problem. So we're losing power to this board, causing audio to drop out because it doesn't have the filter controls and all that kind of stuff. That was our problem. So it took me a while to figure that one out, just from the schematics for this thing. I actually found the schematics, but it don't give you all the wiring or harness layouts. It just kind of gives you a board reference, and that's about all you get. So had to really do some reverse engineering on this thing to figure out how some of this works. But that's what I found out. Now I don't know if this is the same way on the actual standalone Satellite, but that is how this works. So just a little bit of a note for you guys that have one of these. If you lose a output on any of these 2 switches, that means you've probably got a cracked solder joint behind these switches, just so you know. But anyways, that's a look at it. I'll just give you a good overview of it here. It's not perfect. I didn't do a full restoration on this one. I just really did a deep service and recalc and that kind of stuff, even in the organ section, just to make sure it's going to be reliable for Richard, who owns this one. But it's a time capsule. It's got this very retro, futuristic 70s design going on, which actually it looks pretty cool. Some people like it, some people hate it. I'm kind of in between. I like it in some ways, in other ways it's so big. As you can see, it's massive. But we'll walk around here. So you can stand it up on its back, which is how I've had it stored here at the shop. And I do have a stand for it that Richard brought with it. I ended up not using it because it was just easier to get on the table, I found out. But anyways, just a good look at it here down the front. Kind of looks like my chair over there. I've got my retro chair I use. But anyways, I just want to give you guys a quick look at this thing, and I'll show you what's inside this thing as I worked on it. Like I said, I've already done repair work to it, but I will show you a video I took during the repairs here. So here's a look at the CDX without the white cabinet on it, and just exposing the naked chassis here, which is all made up of plywood and steel. Part of why it's so heavy. The cabinet's actually pretty well built, but that's part of also why it's so heavy. It's all plywood. But anyways, if we go here, we can lift this front up. It's hinged at the back. And when we open this up, it exposes our circuitry. We've got the Moog Satellite circuitry all up here. So this is pretty much the same board right here with the program resistor matrix here that you'll find like the standalone Moog Satellite, the Thomas organs, etc. Of course, the Minute Moog also uses the same board as well. So that's pretty much the Moog Satellite. We got expansion programming because it has extra presets. So this is something that's extra for the CDX. And then of course we also go down here and we got the same board you find in the standalone Moog Satellite as well, under that little left hand panel. The only difference with this is you don't have a transformer on it, and you don't have all the rectifier circuits. Since it's getting its power from the organ supply, you don't have to do all the AC to DC conversions of the power. So that's really the only difference. As far as the organ goes, it's a very cool organ. It's very 1960s, but it's also got some cool things that you don't find in a lot of organs, which kind of sets it apart as well. But we'll start over here with the oscillators. These are basically your oscillators for your frequencies of your note references. Very similar to what you find like a Vox Continental, where you have an oscillator per key reference. So for example, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, etc., all the way to B to give you a full octave of note references. And then what it does, it goes into a divider chip here, and that gives you your highest frequency for that oscillator note referencing. And then it goes out under this keyboard, and then it goes out to all the dividers which divide by 2. And this is how it actually gives you your note references off each of those oscillators. So that's how that works. Now, what sets this thing apart from some of the other organs of this era, which is kind of a cool concept. If we lift this keyboard here up, I'm trying to do this real careful here. Don't want to knock this other keyboard down. I'm trying to do this one-handed. If we look right here, we got a keyer circuit for the actual organ. So that actually means we have sustained control over the notes, which is a pretty cool feature here. So it goes to the this keyer circuitry, which I'm still waiting on some parts to come in for that. And then it comes out of that keyer circuit and it goes, let's see if I can set this back down. Maybe I can. Set this back down for a second. Try not to drop anything here. So set that back down. So it goes out of that keyer circuit into these cards here. Now dividers are all square waves. That's what they generate because it's basically flip-flops that divide the frequency down as it goes through them. We go over here to these cards, and these are actually the filter cards that are inductor-based filters. And what they actually do is they take the square wave and make a sine wave. And from here, they go into your actual flute voice controls for your 16/8, 5 1/3, 4 2, 2/3, 2, and that's actually where you get your sine wave references. So it's a matrix of mixing and everything to give you your correct frequencies and all that kind of stuff. And that's pretty much how it works. We've got some other circuitry under here too. I will show you if I can get this thing propped up. So looking underneath this thing, we've got some other circuitry here. We've got the percussion stuff over here, percussion circuitry, and then of course the keyer circuit I've already showed you. We got a little power supply right there, and then this is the bass section here. So you actually got a bass note reference for the last 17 notes. It's just a little mono bass circuit, mixing circuitry, and then we've got the power supply up there at the front. Let me see if I can get this thing shut. So you can somehow just kind of hold these keyboards together. So let me see if I can let that one float for a second. There we go. There we go. Perfect. So over here we got our power supply and all that good stuff. But that's only thing that's not in here right now. I'm still, like I say, I'm still waiting on some parts. Is you'll see a hole right here, and that's actually where our transformer goes. This is where our primary transformer goes. And that's your rectifier filter circuitry that actually is the power, the raw unregulated power that goes to this board, and this is the main power supply. And that's pretty much what's inside this thing. It's like I say, it's a pretty complex organ. It's all made in Italy, so it's all Italian-based stuff. And like I say, very similar to some of the Thomas organ stuff, but having these drawbar style controls is really nice. A lot of the organs during this time were just presets. You'd just have like a toggle and you just have to toggle them. With that, you actually have like a drawbar setup, which is kind of nice. Now there's a shield that goes over these. I got it removed. That's when you see this wire floating. I just removed the shield to show you these cards because I thought you guys might like to see that. But anyways, that's what's inside this thing. So as soon as I get these parts in, I'll put this thing back together and I'll make you guys a demo. So here's some of the parts removed from this organ. As you can see, I've got these socket legs over here. I replaced with actual dip style sockets with a frame. These didn't have a frame, so that caused a lot of problems just in between interconnectivity and stuff like that. We had some trim pots that just fell apart. I went to calibrate and they just broke apart. They're just really cheap components here. That's the biggest issue with the Moog Satellite, was it just wasn't built very well. It was a very cheap build, and they used solid core wiring in the harness, which tends to break internally in the actual insulation. So you have to kind of trace down where they're broken open. And same thing for the Minute Moog as well. It's pretty much the same build quality. But yeah, anyways, you can just kind of see some of the parts here. New caps all around. Timing capacitor for the oscillator. That's another trimmer that's still together, but it's really loose, and it would just kind of flop around as you turn this thing. It's not mating real good, and they're all just pressed together. So, you know, just kind of a cheaper component there. Somebody had replaced one of the trim pots with the wrong value, so I had to put the correct value in there and take care of that. But anyways, that's just a look at some of the parts that came out of this thing, and I just thought you might like to see that. Alright, so anyways, we'll start here with a good demo of this thing, just kind of show you how this thing sounds. We'll start with the mono synth first, and then we'll go into the organ section, and just kind of show you how this thing sounds. Now I've got this thing set up on two different channels because you actually have two separate outputs underneath this thing, where you can actually put the mono synth out on one channel and the organ out on a second channel. So it's actually pretty cool as far as how you can mix this thing. So I've got the mono synth pan just a little bit to the left, and I've got the organ pan just a little bit to the right, and so it kind of gives you a little wider sound there. But anyways, we'll start here with the Moog Satellite first. Now it's a preset machine pretty much. It's just a preset synthesizer. You got these tabs that you change your presets, and you got a few little vague controls over here that doesn't do a whole lot. It's not the typical Moog synthesizer, just to be clear. This is a synthesizer that was built to compete with the Pro Soloist in some ways by ARP. So it's a preset machine. It's got two filters. It's got a high-pass filter and a low-pass filter, but it's only a two-pole low-pass, and I think it's only 12 decibels. So it's not the 24 decibel filter like you find with most Moog synthesizers. So we'll start with the presets here. We'll actually start with mute over here in the brass section. So you got brass, reed, strings, and then we got the expanded presets over here I'll walk you through as well. But like I say, these presets are kind of, you know, what they are, but I'll just kind of show you how they sound. So I've got everything centered over here as far as our contour, color, emphasis, and the rate and depth as far as the modulation goes. I can play with that and glide. But I'll show you all this kind of as we go through it. So here's mute with everything zeroed out. So there's mute. Here's open. We got thin, if that wasn't already thin enough. It's just a different pulse width, basically. We got hollow. We got full. got bright. We got bow, which is probably my favorite under strings. We got pluck. We got strike. We got pick. We also got sustain switch on, so we got just that sustain switch. I usually leave it on because it's just a little bit better anyways. Depending on if you're wanting to get a pick sound, which you can hear. It's kind of like the decay switch on the Mini Moog. We got bell. And then we got lunar, which is kind of a cool preset if you set things up. So here's lunar. We have a color control, so I'm going to show you the color control over here. So if we do something like this right here, we got the vibrato. So I got vibrato on. I showed you those with vibrato on accident, but so we got vibrato switch. So we got that. We also got a square wave. We also have tremolo. That's an interesting sound, especially when you put a little reverb on it, which I'll show you this right quick. Put some glide on it. We also have the control of the contour for the filter. So you can see we get a longer. We have emphasis control too, but it's not going to do what you think of emphasis control. It's just a slight, and it doesn't work on every preset because not every preset uses the low pass filter. For example, this one. If we go to bow though, that little bit of emphasis change there. Not very much change at all, but it's just a little bit. We also got the same contour control. So as you can hear. And of course I'll show you too, we got octave control, we got repeat, which will actually, if we go here and it just resets the envelope generator basically. So we got that. We also got octaves. So right now we're in octave 1, so I'll show you how this sounds. We can go down on 1 octave. We can bring octave 1 back up and 2 down, and then bring them both down. You get something like that. And so there's your octaves. So that's pretty much what the Satellite is. It's not very complex. I'm going to turn that reverb back off there. So now we've got the actual expanded presets here for the Cordovox. So if we hit this preset button to turn it off, now it's looking at these here. We got trumpet. Oh, that's strings. We got trumpet, horn, so these are really quiet. So we got clarinet, banjo, once again the sustain switch, then we got flute, another really soft preset, guitar, saxophone, and then we got piano. So we get stuff like that. So very simple presets. Turn that back off, and then we're back in these presets here. That's with them all off. And that's pretty much the Moog Satellite. very basic little synthesizer. But it is actually kind of interesting to see how it complements an organ. It's actually pretty cool when you put the organ with it. So now we got the organ. So I'll show you this right quick before we go back to the Satellite here. And I got some drawbars turned up. So anyways, it's kind of a good sound organ. We got the vibrato depth here. So that's the organ part. Then we also can play them together. Glide on that. We'll go. So you get something like that. We'll actually put a little vibrato in here. And I'll just kind of show you a combination here. We're going to bring up mixture in the organ section, which actually is right off the keyer circuit, so it's no longer going through those filters for shaping the square into sine. Combine that with a little bit, it sounds really cool. rusty today playing, but it doesn't get very impressive until you hit this coupler button. Now you control the organ with. You get into some Genesis kind of stuff here. So we'll put a little. The headphones got stuck, sorry about that. Play one contact a little bit. So anyways, you can kind of hear. So when you get all this kind of going together, it sounds really good together. And it actually does work. And of course you can lower the frequency once again of the Satellite. I'll just turn the reverb back off there. So anyways, you kind of hear how that sounds. It's just a really cool sound. So that's it combined with the organ. But now I'm going to break down the organ. So you've heard that. So we'll just use the bottom key. And of course I got the coupler back off. So now this is just the Satellite once again, using this coupler button over here. So the organ is actually drawbar like I said earlier. So we can bring everything down. Bring everything down so it's just no sound. We'll go to 16 footage. So it's really quiet. I'm going to bring this up so maybe you can hear. So I'll show you that all the footages are working for all the notes. So there's our 16 footage. Here's our 8 footage. Here's our other footage. It's 5 1/3. And then here's our 4 footage. Here's our 2 2/3 footage. And then here's our 2 footage. It's really high in this upper note. I don't know if you'll hear it on that one. I think they actually fold back that one note. So there's the footages. Now we'll combine them. Back down volume a little bit. So that's really cool. What's also cool though is you got a sustain button, so you can actually, it's got a keyer circuit for the organ. So now we have sustain on that. So you get something like that. And now, something else we got this bass section over here. And I actually thought this was broken when it first came in because I couldn't get this to work. And I realized there's a switch underneath this thing that you can select between making this thing work with pedals, as I mentioned earlier. But what happens is if you don't have the foot pedal, and you got that switch set to keyboard, we've got a bass button right here. So if we hit this, the last 17 notes become a bass, just a mono bass circuit, and it sounds like this. You got bass and guitar bass, which are basically two footages of a divider set. So here's our bass, and it ends right here at this E note. So we got that. Then we also got the guitar. You can mix them. Has a little bit different attack on it. So you can hear it fades out where the bass stays in. We'll bring down the bass. Here's just the guitar bass. So you get something like that. So you bring them together. So you get something like that. So you can just kind of hear how the mixture is. So that's your bass section. You can turn that switch back off and you get your keys back for the organ. So that's pretty much the bass section. They call these flute voices for the drawbars, but that's basically like your drawbars like on a Hammond organ. We can actually bring all the drawbars down. I will show you the mixture. So the mixture, as I mentioned earlier, that's actually off the keyer circuit, and it's just a mixture of the square waves. It's pre-mixed. It's a cool sound. It almost has like a omnichord kind of sound to it. We bring back but you can mix it with the drawbars. As you can hear. So it's a pretty cool feature right there. Now, on this side that you guys have been looking at here, this is the actual percussion. It's got a percussion circuit, so we can turn that on. And you got a couple of features here, which is actually really cool. So the percussion is actually made up of 8, 4, 2, 2/3, or 2 footage, and you can mix them in any way. So if we listen to this, we'll bring down our organ again. So here's just our percussion. You can set your how long you want it, or how fast you want it. So that's just 8 footage. We got 4 footage. We got 2 2/3. Then we got 2. But you mix them together. And right now it's monophonic, so if I hold in a key, you'll see it won't reset. We got this mono button here, which is actually should be called single trigger or multi-trigger. We turn that off, and then you can hold in keys, and it'll reset. Versus, as you can see, it fades out. Something else this organ has that's really cool is we actually got a repeat. Now this is kind of like what the Who used for Pinball Wizard. So you can kind of get the idea. We can set the speed of that. A really fast, really short decay time. And we combine that back with the organ. The only drawback to this percussion is it's shared on both keyboards. So if you have it on, the top keyboard has the same thing. Once you turn the Moog off, you can use what would have been the power switch on a standalone Moog Satellite. This is now just a mute switch. So now we got the satellite off, and you can hear it carries that percussion to the top keyboard. That's the only thing that's kind of annoying, because it'd be nice just to have the percussion just on the lower. Or, have it fixed where you can either assign it to the upper or lower. That would have been a nice feature. But anyways, that's the percussion. That's really the organ. That's really what it is. And it's not a bad sounding organ. Like I say, it's got a pretty good sound to it for an electronic organ of this era. I like it mainly because it actually has drawbars. A lot of the organs during this time period just had presets, so you just would push a little switch down, a rocker switch, and it would just give you a mixed tone already. But this actually gives you the idea that you actually have footages to work with, and so it's more like a typical additive synthesis organ, which is kind of cool. It's really low. I'll just mix a little bit here. A little reverb on that. We'll just have a little fun here for a second. Bring down our percussion a little bit. See kind of how that sounds. We'll put the So as you can hear, it sounds really cool. It's a really cool sound. We can bring our organ down here too. We can keep it coupled. And you have volume controls as well, so we can anyways, that is the Cordovox CDX White Elephant, as it's called. But I just want to take a minute here and show you guys what this thing sounded like. I thought a lot of you might enjoy hearing this thing, getting to see what's inside of it. And it's been a real pleasure working on this thing as well. But anyways, thanks for watching, and there'll be more to come here very soon. Take care.